When Mike decided to rescue an abandoned puppy, he never expected that, just a few months later, he would discover it wasn't a dog at all. Keeping the animal would mean completely changing his life. While Mike was loading his shopping bags into his car, something near the truck parked beside him caught his eye. On the back of the truck was a small cage containing a tiny puppy. The puppy looked so sad and dejected that it immediately tugged at Mike's heartstrings. It was also beautiful, with the fluffiest coat Mike had ever seen, along with a pair of sweet eyes. He instantly fell in love with it. When the truck owner returned, Mike stayed to talk with him about the puppy and asked where he had found it. What the man had to say was disheartening. The puppy had been abandoned near the farm, he explained. Despite his attempts to drive it away, the puppy had refused to leave. The large road running past the farm often attracted unwanted animals that people had dropped off. The farmer and his workers couldn't keep them all, but they tried to find good homes. Unfortunately, this puppy had upset the farmer when it entered the chicken coop and destroyed several chickens. Some of the others had died from the shock. The farmer, with limited resources, had suffered a significant loss. He wanted the puppy gone, but couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he planned to take the puppy to the vet and have it euthanized for a low cost. Hearing this broke Mike's heart. He couldn't let the puppy be put down simply because it was hungry and alone. It was only doing what came naturally, which was trying to survive. Mike knew he had to help, so he offered to take the puppy off the farmer's hands. He even agreed to pay for the pup, hoping the farmer could use the money to replace some of his lost animals. It was a win-win situation. The man agreed as long as Mike promised the dog would never return to his land. Mike hugged the puppy close, his body relaxing as he felt the warmth of the little creature. The puppy must have been so scared, and Mike was grateful he had come just in time to save him. But now he had to figure out what to do with a puppy he hadn't planned on adopting. Mike lived in an apartment with no garden, but he eventually managed to clear some space in his home for the pup to play in. He named the dog Lucky, and they formed an instant bond. Mike couldn't say if it was because Lucky knew he had been saved, or if they just shared a deep connection, but either way, Mike had never expected a dog to become his best friend. They had lots of fun together, but Mike had to make sure Lucky got enough exercise, or he would get frustrated and sometimes even destructive. He loved snatching Mike's hats and hoodies, but wasn't careful with them. Hats often ended up chewed up, and the hoodies became his favorite spot to nap. Given Lucky's energy and playfulness. Mike thought managing him on walks would be a challenge, but the puppy was surprisingly calm and obedient. He was content to follow Mike's pace and explore the surrounding forests, up until he saw other dogs. Then, he would completely lose control, wanting to play with every dog he encountered, even those who weren't interested. It was sweet, and people often complimented Mike on Lucky's good nature. Lucky was a remarkable dog with many talents, but there was one major issue: he wouldn't stop growing. As time went on, he grew massive. His black coat became even fluffier, and he transformed into a stunning adult dog. However, most people were intimidated by his size, and their reactions made Mike question the dog's growing proportions. He tried to convince himself it was just a characteristic of wolf dogs, but he couldn't ignore the nagging worry. What if Lucky had a hormone imbalance causing him to grow unnaturally? Mike was anxious about what the vet might say, but knew he had to get answers. So, Mike took Lucky to the vet. As soon as the nurse saw the dog, she let out a small scream. They asked him to move to another room, believing Lucky could harm other animals or even the humans nearby. Mike knew better than to argue at this point. Lucky was only a few months old, but already he was larger than most massive dog breeds. It was fascinating to take walks and observe people's reactions when he tried to befriend smaller dogs. Mike had to admit he had some suspicions that Lucky wasn't exactly what he had believed him to be. Initially, He had been convinced that his puppy was the result of two purebred wolf dogs, but months later he would learn the truth. His sweet companion was not a dog at all. The vet laughed when Mike entered with Lucky, the large puppy sitting behind him with his massive head resting on Mike's shoulder. Lucky, it seemed, had an undeniable affection for his human. However, everything was about to change in the next few moments. The good news was that Lucky was incredibly healthy, and there was nothing physically wrong with him. The surprising news was that the dog was actually a wolf. To be specific, a full Canadian black wolf with no dogs in his family tree. The reason Lucky had been abandoned near the farmer's land was unclear. Perhaps his pack had left him behind, or maybe someone had tried to adopt him and realized their mistake halfway through. Regardless of how it happened, his fate had intertwined with Mike's, who had unknowingly been raising him as a puppy for months. To say Mike was shocked was an understatement. Lucky had never shown any signs of aggression, and aside from preferring meat over kibble, Mike had never suspected anything was off. He had always assumed Lucky was just a large dog, domesticated and friendly. But now, Mike realized that he could never let him go back to the wild, nor could he keep treating him like a typical dog. While this wasn't entirely bad news, it would change their lives. The vet explained that Mike needed to contact the local wildlife authority. They weren't sure how the situation would be handled. Mike lived in a residential neighborhood, which was far from ideal for a wolf, especially one as large as Lucky. Lucky had been living in a backyard, interacting with people, children, and pets much smaller than him. Mike would have to make major adjustments in his lifestyle if he wanted to keep his best friend. A few days later, a local wildlife inspector came to assess the situation. He would decide whether to allow Mike to keep the wolf or confiscate him. Upon seeing the bond between Mike and Lucky, the inspector was moved and decided not to separate them if possible. The first step was to get the wolf out of the city, as having a wild animal in town was not acceptable. Mike sold his house, liquidated his assets, and bought a small plot of land that would be more suitable for raising a wolf. The inspector, having never encountered a case like this, did his best to help Mike navigate the situation. Most laws were designed to prevent ordinary people from keeping wild animals, and he explained to Mike that he would need to go above and beyond to ensure Lucky could stay with him. Mike was determined. He loved the wolf like a child and was willing to do whatever it took to keep him. The thought of Lucky being placed in a shelter or sent to another home, never receiving his head scratches again, made Mike's blood run cold. It would have been heartbreaking for both of them. The land gave Lucky plenty of space to run and play, but Mike needed to build an enclosure to keep people safe. Mike worked hard to get everything ready and up to code. Because one major hurdle remained. He had to be registered as an animal rescue expert to legally keep a wild animal. To do so, he needed to demonstrate he could provide everything Lucky needed. Mike wanted to share his journey with his friends and family on social media. He started by posting videos of his little puppy growing into the giant dog he had become, slowly easing people into the news. Everyone was shocked when they learned that Lucky was a wolf, but what truly amazed them was the bond between Mike and the animal. The wolf behaved like a playful puppy, often trying to nibble on Mike's ears or hoodie. Despite his size and sharp teeth, he never hurt Mike. Even though Lucky was full of energy, a simple scolding would calm him down instantly. Unfortunately, the social media posts led to unexpected consequences. His story went viral when family members shared the cute videos, and everything spiraled from there. Some people criticized Mike for adopting an animal from a random farmer, while others questioned how he hadn't realized Lucky wasn't a dog. Some thought he was doing the wolf a disservice by keeping him in his care. Thankfully, most comments came from open-minded people who understood that Mike only had Lucky's best interests at heart. These viewers were invested in the pair's incredible relationship and eagerly followed their updates. Mike's following grew exponentially in A matter of weeks, but he didn't care about the attention. His focus remained on the bond he shared with his remarkable wolf. Mike had to focus on preparing the place for the inspection. He spent all his savings on building an enclosure for the wolf to sleep in, prioritizing the most important aspects. Unfortunately, the inspector didn't think the enclosure was suitable. For Lucky, according to him, the wolf needed much more space to be comfortable. Mike had planned to let Lucky roam freely, taking long walks and playing, just as he always had, but that wasn't enough for the inspector. He made it clear that all required standards must be met, leaving no room for negotiation. It was an all-or-nothing situation. The inspector warned Mike that he had only a few weeks to make the necessary adjustments, or Lucky would be taken away. Although the inspector was clearly sympathetic to their bond, his hands were tied, and he couldn't make exceptions. For the animal to remain in Mike's care, all his needs had to be met, or Mike couldn't be licensed as a shelter. Mike was devastated. He had no idea how he would accomplish everything in such a short time. He already spent all his money on the property and making initial improvements, and was still working his day job in the city, after all. Yet, it wasn't enough for the massive upgrades needed. He began to accept that he would have to say goodbye to Lucky. In an attempt to make it easier for the wolf, Mike started limiting their interactions, but that only made things worse for both of them. Lucky grew depressed because his friend wasn't playing with him anymore, and Mike felt hopeless. The wolf was too attached to him. Would he even survive if they were separated? Mike couldn't stop worrying about what might happen. Then, something incredible occurred that changed everything. A friend commented on one of Mike's posts, sharing his struggles, which inspired people to come together and support him. Before Mike knew it, he had raised enough money to make all the necessary changes. He later learned that even the inspector had contributed to the cause. When the inspector returned to check on the progress, he was thrilled to see that everything was up to code. He had never been happier to give Mike the good news. He could keep his wolf for life. Mike rejoiced, and his online supporters cheered with him. Mike continued to spend quality time with Lucky, strengthening their bond. It was a relief knowing that he had all the necessary paperwork in place to care for his best friend, allowing him to focus on proper training. But Mike wasn't going to stop there. While he was glad to give Lucky a home, their journey together had inspired him to do even more. There were other animals in need, and now, with the right qualifications, Mike could offer them a safe home. 2. He just needed the resources. Seeing how invested people were in Lucky's well-being confirmed for Mike that many people want to help animals but may not have the skills or time. They are still willing to support those who can. Mike decided to create Lucky-themed merchandise and started selling it online. He also received numerous offers from people eager to help with the care of Lucky and other animals, which he gratefully accepted. But that wasn't all. People knew about his natural ability with animals. Whenever wolves or wolf hybrids needed assistance, Mike was the first call. He couldn't say no to any animal in need. The added benefit was that Lucky could now make friends of his own size, or at least dogs who were big enough to play with him without getting hurt. But Mike didn't limit himself to wolves. Any animal that needed help found its place in his sanctuary. Most recently, he posted videos of 2 wild boars that loved belly rubs. Mike had an incredible gift for bonding with all kinds of animals. The day he found that small puppy in a crate on the back of the truck was the day he discovered his true calling. Since then, he has changed many lives and doesn't plan on stopping. His big dream is to create large, suitable homes for all the animals in his care. Starting with Lucky, that's what he's saving for now, as he aims to give Lucky the chance to live as close to the wild as possible while still within the safety of the sanctuary. As a massive animal who loves head scratches, Lucky will never be able to live independently. But Mike hopes to give him the next best thing someday. Until then, Mike continues to pour his heart and soul into giving the animals the love and care they deserve. Life has changed drastically since their days in the city when they believed Lucky was just a dog, but the bond between man and animal remains as strong as ever. And that's something that will never change. Did you enjoy this story? Would you have helped little Lucky too? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Would you like to live in a sanctuary with animals? Thanks so much for listening and have a great day. See you in the next video.